can I purchase a property? Is it possible when I look at my finance? And does it make sense regarding the plans I do have for the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah.
And then to make the decision afterwards, not to build up a huge dream and then wake up with the knowledge that you are not able to purchase a property.
It's the Germany Experience, the podcast about life in Germany as seen through the eyes of outsiders. I'm your host, Sean. Get in touch, thegermanyexperience.de, or you can email me at info@thegermanyexperience.de. And this episode is a long one, so we're going to get right into it. We are talking about financing a home in Germany. And to do this, I'm joined by Kerstin Brunner, who is a finance ambassador. She provides financial education for expats, repats, and internationals. And obviously, one of her areas of focus is also purchase of property. You can find her on LinkedIn. Links are in the show notes. In this episode, Kerstin explains how to decide if buying property is the right decision for you. We talk about the costs associated with property purchases, like notary fees, agent fees, and so on. And we talk about getting the bank loan. There's a lot of information in this episode. And of course, the advice is general, and it all depends on your specific situation. So if you do have questions for Kerstin, contact her at the links provided in the show notes. Let's get right into it. Here is Kerstin talking about purchasing property in Germany. Kerstin, welcome to the podcast.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. And let's start off with this. Maybe you can give me an overview of who you are and what services you provide.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kerstin Brunner, and I'm also known as finance ambassador. So maybe some people know me from LinkedIn. I'm very active there. And what I'm doing, I try to explain it in one sentence. So I support people in financial topics to close gaps in language and knowledge. And I support them to reach their goals. And I'm supporting people in many ways. So for example, in pension questions, health insurance questions, people who are asking, how can I read a payslip, for example? Why do I need to do so many social payments? And one of my topics is also purchasing a property.
Yes. One of the biggest financial topics that you could potentially have, because the other things, yes, they're difficult, but there's a lot of money that goes into stake at property. So that's why I think that question comes up a lot. But I mean, the services that you provide are extremely useful, because that's when you mentioned like reading a payslip. I've been here 15 years and I'm not entirely sure I can read my payslip in its entirety. But anyway, that's beside the point. But yeah, these are things that foreigners need help with. And we met because of the Welcome to Germany summit back in, was it September? When was it?
Right.
September.
It was on the 29th of September this year.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was a summit where you and Lisa organized this group of experts to come together and give a talk. And I was one of the speakers, and that's where I got to know you a bit better. I think I'd heard of you and knew you before that, but it was just in that whole summit thing that we got to speak a bit more. So let's get to our topic for this episode. So the big thing is buying a house in Germany. A lot of foreigners might come here. I know, for example, in South Africa, where I'm from, and I know a lot of Americans see it this way as well, is it's normal for people to, when they have a good job and they're earning a decent salary, to then say, okay, I'm buying a house. That is the mindset of a lot of foreigners that come here to Germany. Maybe it's not a thing for people who are not staying for longer, but for foreigners who are coming here to settle, at some point they might think, should I buy a house? It might be the normal thing to do, that, okay, now I need to buy a house. So this is going to be, talk a bit about that, like what do foreigners need to know about buying a house? And I think the first thing is does it make sense to buy a house? So in your opinion, Kerstin, what kind of financial factors should people take into account when they're thinking of buying a house?
It's an interesting question, because in my eyes, you can't have a separate look on purchasing a property, because it is a part of your daily life then. Mm-hmm. And what you need to know is when you want to buy or to purchase a property in Germany is that you need liquid or equity. You need money, and it's round about 20% of the purchasing price.
I know,
So
which is
yeah.
crazy. Which is crazy because, like in South Africa, for example, it's 10%, and 10% is a lot. Like even if you're saying so, what you're saying is you need sort of an amount of money that you can put down on the loan that is 20% of the value of the house. So, I mean, depending on the value that you're paying for the house, this is a lot of money that you have to have in cash or, like you say, liquid assets.
Yeah. And you brought a different topic, the loan. It's also very interesting to do a loan planning because it's not only there's one loan plan for everyone. The loan should fit or should work for your plans, for your current situation and for the future plans. And this is why you normally need an expert helping you to find out what suits to you and your situation.
Yeah, we're going to get to the loans in a bit when we start talking about what the banks offer and so on. But yes, these are the things that you do need to take into account in the beginning. So it's like this 20% deposit essentially that you have to put down in the beginning.
Yeah.
When does it make sense for foreigners to purchase instead of simply just renting a place?
Yeah. So when you think about your plans, and something you said before is when people plan to stay here in Germany, it could make sense to have an own property because the difference in buying a house or renting a house is that when you rent a house or an apartment, you pay monthly a rent to the landlord, and the landlord, for example, has the right to increase the rent. So he or she needs to know the law of tenancy. So it's not something that comes up quickly or something like that, but it's possible that you get an increase in your rent.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have extra rights, it's just a renting contract. And that makes it flexible for both sides. So that means it's possible from both sides that there's a termination. So if you want to relocate in Germany, it is many times it's more easy to stay in a rented apartment or house.
Yeah.
And sometimes in the renting contract, there are duties. So, for example, gardening if you rent a house. So, you need to check if you want to do this or not. So, some people love to do gardening,
Yeah.
others not. So, yeah.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Like, so you're right. There are things. I know. I stayed in a house where there was something called Winterdienst. It was an apartment building, and each apartment had a week where they would be in charge of Winterdienst. So what Winterdienst is in the winter when it snows, we would have to shovel the snow away from the driveway, from the pavement in front of the building, and stuff like that. Which is terrible. I mean, like I hated it. But I can tell you, if you buy a house, you have to do this anyway because it's your place. And I think that's one of the things to think about is that when things go wrong in an apartment, if you're renting, it's just a case of calling the landlord and saying, hey, this tap is leaking or this is going on or something needs replacing. And then the owner has to pay for it. But if you've bought a house, you're responsible for all of those maintenance costs. And I can tell you as a homeowner that these costs build up over time. It's like it is a substantial amount that you would be paying for keeping the house maintained.
Yes, that's right. So all rights and duties are on your side.
Mm-hmm.
And interesting is when we go back to the cost. So if you do have a contract, a loan contract, the costs are equal in the runtime. So that means you know with what kind of cost you can calculate. And what is really interesting for people who want to get retired here in Germany is that a house or an apartment can be an option as part of the retirement planning as well. And so there's a third option where you can choose. So, for example, to buy a property for external use. So that you are a landlord renting an apartment or a house. It's a third option.
Yeah.
And this is also an option for getting extra income while you are working or when you are retired. So this is sometimes something that is interesting for some people. They are asking because it comes up with tax compliance. So you have some possibility to save tax, but you need a tax advisor for that.
Yes, and I think some foreigners sometimes get faced with this when it's time to leave. If they've purchased a house, I knew of at least two circumstances where people had bought a house here, and then it ended up that they decided to leave after maybe 5 years or whatever, and then you've got this asset that you need to decide what you're going to do with. And sometimes they decide to continue renting it when they're not in Germany, so they move back home and they continue renting it, or they go into the selling process. Which is tricky as well, because if you sell too early, there's a lot of problems that come into play.
Yeah, it depends. So many people do have this 10-year penalty in head. So when you are owner of the property and you live there for over 3 years, then you don't have to do or to pay this this extra tax.
Yeah.
So, but if you bought a property for rent and you want to sell it before the 10 years are over, then the penalty comes up. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that depends on your loan contract of what kind of problems you're going to run into. You mentioned working out what makes sense to people with regards to the decision to purchase. Like it's got to match their income and whatever else. Do you have some guidelines of how people can make that decision if they can afford that house or not?
Mm-hmm. So I know that it is a very sensitive topic. So the people mostly dream about having an own property. I would say something like a nest, something that they can call their home. And what happens is that they do have this dream and they want to do everything for this dream. And that could be difficult sometimes. So what I would recommend is that you find a person who can help you in this process in a interview style, so or in a conversation, so to talk about what is your current life situation, what are your future plans, and also about the liquid money, and to build up something like a roadmap that you can see, okay, can I purchase a property? Is it possible when I look at my finance? And does it make sense regarding the plans I do have for the next 10, 20 years?
Yeah.
And then to make the decision afterwards, not to build up a huge dream and then wake up with the knowledge that you are not able to purchase a property, or that it doesn't make sense because you want to leave in 5 years and then you said, okay, it's ways too complicated to rent it and I don't want to go in this selling process, as you said, Sean. Yeah, to have an idea what comes up with the dream to purchase a house or an apartment.
Yeah, it's very tricky because these things are not always clear. The full picture isn't always clear, but you need to look at what you know now and see if it makes sense. And with regards to the price of the house in relation to salaries and things like that, is that something you can give a guideline on, or is it like you say, pretty specific to each case?
So it's not all about the salary. So in the end, if you want to purchase and you need a bank for that, the bank has the last word about everything. So they will check everything and then they say, yes, you get a loan, or no, you don't. And that could be very frustrating when people didn't make the step I described before, because then they run into emotional feelings they don't want to have, because it's very sad when you have a dream and someone says you can't have this, or you can't reach that goal.
So that's more the thinking process behind when you're planning, when you're thinking of considering buying a property and things that you need to think of. But now let's move on to the purchasing process itself. What costs can can someone expect with purchasing? Because I know that there are some costs that people might not be aware of in the actual purchase itself. It's not just the house price that you're looking at.
That's right. And we are in Germany, and everything is a bit more complicated than
Yes.
in different countries. So I try to paint a picture for that. So first of all, what the people need to know is that there is a land transfer tax. And to make it more complicated, it's not a percentage for whole Germany.
Yeah.
So it is. It regards on the state where you purchase the property, and it comes up with 3.5 up to 6.5% of the purchasing amount. And three examples for that. So if you purchase in Bayern, you will have 3.5%. If you purchase in Baden-Württemberg, it's 5%. And if you purchase in Nordrhein-Westfalen, it's 6.5%. So you can see it's different.
And I mean, that's 6.5% of, let's say, I mean, what are you going to buy? What do you say, like 500,000 maybe? Or, I mean, I don't know what prices you're looking at. That's like 32,000 euros or something like that. If you're talking about 6.5% of just over 500,000. So that's also pushes that overall value. And is can you get a loan for that? Can that be part of your loan from the bank?
And no, that should be a part of your liquid money.
Of your liquid money. Okay, so that's the liquid money you're speaking of. The liquid money doesn't only go down to the down payment on the house, but it's also going to things like this land transfer tax.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's pricey. It's pricey. So, and then what else is there? So there's that land transfer tax.
Yes, and then there is something that is called a land register cost and notarial fees, and both together are around about 2%.
Yeah.
But excluding that, so you need to pay Mehrwertsteuer on that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it depends if you look for a property without a real estate agent or with a real estate agent. So if you're lucky and you look in your neighborhood and maybe an old granny want to sell her house, so maybe we can use this example, and she said, okay, I want to do it on a private, so you don't need to pay for real estate agent. But if you go with a bank or with a real estate agent, then additional costs come up.
Yeah.
And it depends. So it's also on the state. The brokerage, it's about 3.5 up to 7%. And I brought examples here as well. If you want to purchase in Bayern, it's 7.14%, and it's half the landlord and the buyer. Then if you purchase in Hessen, it's 5.95%. It's only for the buyer. And if you want to purchase in Nordrhein-Westfalen, it's 7.14%. It's also 50-50.
Okay. Yeah. Which is crazy. Like, you need to look at where you are, which state you are in, and then and see what the estate agent, essentially, what their percentages is. It makes sense to me that the buyer and the seller would split it potentially, but it's still something that I didn't expect in Germany, is that you would have to pay for the estate agent. Because I know, for example, always coming back to South Africa, is that in all cases for renting as well, the buyer the renter or the seller always pays for the agent, because they're trying to sell their property and the agent's going to help it. So that is something that was very surprising to me, and it is expensive. Like you said, it's at least 3 point. For me, it was that it would have been 3.5%. I can tell you a story about my purchasing experience. We were lucky enough to find a house where where we could do it private as well. And the only reason was they had recently just purchased a house. The people who were selling the house that I bought, they had just purchased another house that they were planning to move into. So they'd just been through the whole process with an agent, and they decided, well, there's nothing that the agent is doing that we can't do. We're going to do it without an agent. And that's what we did. And I think we were very lucky because it saved us that cost of the agent's fee, and because it can be quite pricey. The danger is an agent knows all the rules and the steps and what needs to be done where for the whole process. So it's not like the agents do nothing, but it is possible to do it without an agent, especially if one of the parties knows more or less what they're doing.
Yeah, right. And this is very interesting because I have a tip here. So if you go without a relocation agent, you maybe have the intention that something's not good with the house. So maybe you have a feeling like that. And then you have the possibility before you say, okay, I want to purchase it, to have a surveyor that could check the material and everything. So, and this guy starts with 500 euros. So it depends what kind of checking should be made. And but then you are clear here, and you know, is there something I need to have a deeper look at?
Yeah, I think they're called Gutachters, right? In German,
Gutachter, right?
Gutachter.
Yeah.
So they come essentially, like you said, they depending on their fees, it could be 500 euros and upwards. They come and have a look at the house. There's somebody who knows how houses are built, what to expect. They check the heating systems. They check the everything you can imagine. And I think it's a good idea to do anyway, just to make sure that somebody that you've paid money to. Independently of the situation, takes a look at the house. Of course, the problem with this is that if there's because I saw this happen when I was looking in Erlangen. So Erlangen's a city here near Nuremberg, but it's very sought after when it comes to properties. And if people was, you said, oh, you saw the property and you liked it, you didn't have time to say, can I come back next week with a Gutachter? Because there's another family or another person that's wanting to buy right there, and he's saying, well, we're not going to worry about the Gutachter, we can get this deal done this week. So it is very tricky if the house, but in that case I would rather let the house go, even if you've fallen in love with it, because if you don't know and you're spending so much money, you don't know if you're purchasing a moldy basement that can't be fixed, or something that's going to need structural renovations in 5 years' time. That is crucial to know.
Could be very expensive in the end.
Yes.
Right? Yes.
It could be super expensive in the end.
So, and I do have two more points. So first of all is the relocation itself. So if you want to move from one property to the other, so it depends if you want to do everything by your own and with friends, or you want to have a company that helps you here. And sometimes, so it's also a tip, if you get relocated because of a job change, you can talk to your employer, and some employers get extra money for that. So if they want you to relocate to get into this new position, then you can ask for extra money, because you get in thousands of euros. So 2, 3, 4,000 euros for a relocation. So it depends how the way between location 1 and 2, and how many stuff you have to transport and how many people they do need, but it could be a huge amount of money, extra money.
Yeah. I actually did that when I purchased my house. I went to the company that I was working for at that time, and I got a relocation fee, and they helped me move closer because it was closer to the job. So it's definitely a good tip, Kerstin. It's a very good tip. So coming back to the purchasing cost. So we've got the what was the first one? Sorry, I'm just gone blank now. The first one that we mentioned.
First was land transfer tax.
That's right, land transfer tax. Then you've got the potential agent fee.
No, the land register cost and notarial fee.
That's right, land register and notarial fee, and then
the real estate agent fee.
And this altogether can come up to like what, another 10% in total, 12% on top of the house value, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and of course the notary fees is something that it's important as well, because for any real estate purchase to go through, it's got to have a notary process right at the end. They read you the entire contract. Both parties are sitting there, the seller and the buyer, and then at the end, everybody signs little pieces of paper, and that makes it official. So that is what you're paying the notary for.
Yes, right. So it's good for the bank, but it's also good for everyone who is involved into the process. the former landlord and you as people who purchase, so everything is right, and everything is official, as you said. And Sean, if you like, I do have an example for financing costs as well.
Yes.
So because you started with a 500,000 euros, and
Yeah.
right now we do have round about 4% interest.
That's
So
right.
that means if you want to have 500,000 euros from the bank, you need to pay monthly 1,667 euros and 67 cents, or 20,000 euros yearly for the interest. And then you also have to pay redemption, and it's minimum 2%. So that means on top, you have to pay 833 euros and 33 cents monthly, or 10,000 euros a year. And that means if we calculate with 6%, it's 2,500 euros monthly, or 30,000 euros yearly. And you need the equity of minimum 100,000 euros. So that means yearly 30,000 euros payment for the loan, and your money that needs to be minimum 100,000 euros.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great example, actually, Kirsten, because it kind of it indicates, and it all depends on how the bank loans are structured as well. So I mean, a lot of that depends on that. But what you were saying, so just to make sure I'm understanding, you were saying that there's a interest part that you're paying off during that year, and then there's the actual loan part. I think that's what you meant when you said redemption. So that's actually paying back the loan, right? So you're paying interest.
Yes.
Over the year, and then you're paying a certain amount of the actual loan that you borrowed from the bank. And then on top of that, you were saying you're paying for the, what did you mean you're paying for the equity, that 100,000?
No, it's just the liquid money.
That you would have needed up front.
It's a 20%.
Yeah.
You need to show that you have the liquid money.
Yeah. But you're not paying, but you didn't pay that liquid money.
No, you spend the money on what I said before, on the land transfer tax and some different payments you need to do. And maybe you want to have, maybe there's a kitchen inside. You purchase a house or an apartment, there's a kitchen, but you want to have a new fridge or something like that. Then you can say, okay, I do have this extra liquid money, and it shouldn't be a part of the loan, and I want to pay it by my own.
Okay. Yeah. So that 100,000 is the 20% that you're talking about that you have to have to take the loan in the first place. Yeah.
Right.
That covers the other costs and the other fees. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I guess we've touched on a lot of this already, Kerstin, but maybe we can go step by step, just briefly, through the entire process from finding a house and then to getting the keys at the end of the process.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So this is something I recommend in the beginning. Before you start looking for a property, make a finance check. Have a look on what comes in every month, what goes out every month, what is the amount of the liquid money you have. And if you're not sure, contact an expert. Yeah. So he and she will help you with all this calculation. And it should be a person who is also in this financing topic, because later on in the process, you will get a loan offer from a bank, maybe, and then you are not sure is it the right one. But this is something that comes later on. Yeah. So, okay, first of all, check what is possible, because then you can dream the dream where you can reach your goals.
Yeah, a realistic dream.
Yeah, realistic dream.
Yeah.
And then start looking for the right property. So what are the options? So for example, you can have a look in news papers. You can ask in your neighborhood. So the people around you, do you know someone who is selling an apartment or a house? We are looking for one. You can have a look in the internet. Or, as I said, you can talk to a real estate agent or a bank person, but be aware with the extra costs. So I would recommend first to start private, I will say, to ask people, so maybe colleagues in your company, to talk with the people that you are looking for a property. And if it's not possible to find one, then you can go into this cost options.
Yeah. And I can also say that doing it privately like that gives you more of a chance of getting a house that you want or everything. Because especially because properties are so in demand at the moment, things tend to go pretty quickly, and you're just another face showing up at the door to look at at a property. There's nothing setting you aside. So sometimes, I mean, I'm not saying it's completely impossible, but I'm saying it might be slightly easier getting a recommendation from someone, getting a personal contact where that they're selling an apartment or a house, because then you're in the door and you're talking to the person. You got that personal recommendation, and then that helps. It might give you a bit more of a chance.
Yeah. Okay, so when you found a property that suits you and your family, then you will have an appointment there, have a look, go around, and I would recommend also to have a look in the neighborhood. So for people who want to live very quiet, so if you find a property in the Bahnhofstraße or the Schulstraße, that could be noisy. The Schulstraße, maybe there's a school in the neighborhood, and if you make a home office or stay at home and you want to have it very quiet, then you need to check that. So that is something I would recommend, is if you have a look at the property, maybe it is possible to visit it twice. So it's something that Sean told us, that it's very difficult because many people waiting in line for a property right now. But maybe it is possible to get there in the afternoon and in the morning, for example, so to have a different view. And if you want to have a walk in the neighborhood, you don't need an appointment with anyone.
Exactly.
You can walk around there.
Exactly, and that I'd highly recommend that, is just to have a look at the direct neighborhood to see what's there, what it's like, what get a feel for the place.
Yeah, and what we talked about before is, if you do it privately, then maybe you can have the check from the surveyor, from the Gutachter, to make a check. So if the landlord is willing to do this.
Yeah. And most are. I think in the sale process, if there's not a huge demand for the property, they're quite happy. I know from personal experience, the house that my wife and I bought, the owners were very, very accommodating for us. They let us come back a second, and I think we had 3 visits in total. The second visit was with a friend of ours that has built houses himself. He's not a Gutachter or a surveyor specifically, but he knows houses very well. He knows what to look for, and he went through it from top to bottom. We should have possibly done a Gutachter, although everything, we've been here 5 years and it was fine. But it was a risk that we knew we were taking. We knew that we trusted this friend of ours, but we also knew that a Gutachter would do a much more thorough check. So there's that. But the owners that were selling were so accommodating for us to come back. They made us cake the second time that we came. So it was I had such a fantastic experience buying this house, because they were such lovely people, and it was just such a cool experience. So yeah, for me it was, we were lucky, and I think but I think a lot of owners would understand, okay, they want to come back with the Gutachter, and you're probably not the only people that will be asking for that. It's only for really in demand places that you might have a problem.
Yeah, and we do have laws here, so it's not allowed to hide things. So if there are damages and someone tried to hide it, it's in the contract that it's not allowed. But it makes everything more complicated, because then you need a lawyer, and that's too difficult. But we do have laws here. Germany, it's complicated, but we do have laws for that. So the next step is, in my eyes, to if you say, okay, I want to purchase this property, because this is something you need to know, that a loan always is related to one property. So it's not possible to get to the bank and say, okay, in future I want to purchase a property and I need around about €500,000 and then you make a loan and everything runs. No,
Yeah.
in the process, you need the information from the property you want to purchase. That's
Yeah.
really important because it's not only your, I don't know the word right now, when someone is liquid and that the bank says, okay, it's okay to get the loan. It's also the property, so they can say if the pricing is okay,
Yeah.
and if the region where the property is, how is the normal price there, and this is something that gets into the calculation as well. And that means you need to have a unique concept for the loan that suits your family, your plans, and what are the points or the topics you need to have a deeper look in. It's, for example, the interest rate, it's the duration,
Yeah.
and unscheduled repayment, for example. And you need to know right now that the bank needs 4 to 6 weeks to get the loan ready. It's a long time.
Yes, it is. But they can give approval, I think,
Yes.
beforehand. Yeah, it is kind of tricky because you got to get the timing right. But what I can also say is that you mentioned that the banks don't give sort of a they can't approve it in advance. They need to go through the property, check all the things that you said. But I think what the banks do is give you a theoretical approval for a certain amount. So I think what happened in our case is they said this is what we could see ballpark figure, and I think that there was, I can't remember now, but I think they even gave us a slip of paper just to say that we were capable of handling this debt. But it was clear that didn't mean anything. It would depend specifically on the product or the property that we purchased. So it was kind of like a theoretical, yes, here's an approval, you could do this, but we need to know what the property details are before we actually give you any loans.
Yes. So this is something many people come to me with. I call it an offer. And what is the difference between a loan contract and a loan offer is the offer is without any signature. So you talk to the bank and you give them all the information, and then they say, okay, theoretically, you can have the loan with this and that construction. And it is a real loan or a loan contract after signing it. So this is the difference here.
Yeah.
And you need to be aware in the whole process, there's a lot of paperwork. So when you then go to the bank and say, we want to have this loan, you need to fill out a lot of papers and give a lot of information of you personal and also of the property. And as I know, the banks only have certificates and papers in German. So if you're not so familiar with German, maybe you need someone helping you to fill out the forms, because
Definitely.
It's the same. What I recommend is check if your bank is possible to guide you through the whole process, because there are many people working at the bank. They are not so familiar with talking English. Yeah. And it is a long way to go. And it's a need that you trust the person and that you can understand what the person explains.
Yeah. And rather be extra cautious here, because there's a lot of money that you pay in, and the loan makes a big difference to your future comfort. Because if you agree to something that you didn't realize or you didn't understand it's going to affect the way that you're paying this loan off for the next few years. So you really want to make sure you're getting that information right.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes, and after the bank says, okay, no worries, you can have the loan contract. After that, you will make a notary appointment. And it's also right now 4 to 6 weeks, maybe. So it depends to what kind of notary you went and how full they are right now. But it could be that you have a waiting time here. And this is something I highly recommend. Is what people are not aware of is when they go to the notary without having a loan contract and you sign the contract at the notary, you need to take the property. And it doesn't matter if you have money or not.
Yeah, you're legally binding yourself
Yes.
to taking the property. So you you need to have that loan settled.
I had this in past
Oh
with
God, I didn't
clients
think
of
about this.
mine. They told me, oh, we do have an appointment with a notary in 2 weeks, but we don't have a loan contract. We have an offer. That's enough. And I said, no, it's not enough.
Yeah, you need to actually have the physically signed, because
Yes.
because if you sign that over and then the loan falls through for whatever reason, the bank doesn't sign it because suddenly they realize some details or something, you don't have a loan, but you do have a property that you're going to have to pay for, and that could be serious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the last point in my eyes is how do you get the keys? So there's a step before. If you went to the notary and we had a conversation regarding the land register cost and the notarial fees,
Mm-hmm.
if everything is right with that, the money gets from one bank account to the other bank account, and the notary then gives the information to the Grundbuch, means that everything gets changed, that you are then the owner. And normally in that process, you get the keys. So it depends on how good you are with the former landlord. So maybe you can get the keys before the money got transferred. But please don't tear up walls or something like that. It's just for cleaning or doing planning. And after the money is transferred, you are the you have the possibility to get the keys, and you are the owner officially when everything is in the Grundbuch. And then things comes up, for example, with a Wohngebäudeversicherung. So most people do have that.
So
That it
insurance.
switches to you.
Yeah, and I mean, insurance is a whole other podcast episode. We're not going to get into that now. So that's also something to keep in mind when you're planning your financials. Is that yes, you've got all these other costs, but you're also going to have certain insurance policies in place. But we're not going to go into that now because that's another topic altogether. Yeah, it's. I didn't think about that possibility of someone having a notary appointment and not having a loan fully agreed on. That's quite surprising, but it's good information to know. Yeah, with us, I think we got the keys before we had the notary appointment, and then a few days after that we got the keys. The money hadn't actually transferred, but we got the keys. But exactly like you said, for measure, we needed to measure things and plan things and figure out how we were going to do all the kinds of things in the house. But it's a big moment when you get those keys and you finally go into the place that you just bought. And you're like, oh my God, this is real. Okay, so that was the step by step of more or less what you can experience. It's going to be slightly different depending on different variables, but I think those are the main steps of purchasing a property. But now let's just get back to the bank loan thing. Like what are the typical kinds of loans that foreigners should, or not just foreigners, but anyone that's buying a house in Germany should expect from a loan?
So when we talk about loan plans, so in my eyes there are two main loan plans. So it's the annuity loan. This is normally when you purchase a property for your own, and this is what I said before: is that you pay interest and redemption in the runtime of the contract.
Yeah.
And there is something that's called bullet loan. This is for people who purchase a property from the beginning to rent it, and you only pay the interest in the runtime of the contract.
Okay.
And when the contract ends, then you pay the redemption in a full amount.
Oh, okay.
And this is something you need a tax advisor for.
Okay.
So no, I will say 90% or 85% of the loan plans are annuity loans.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
But it's just an information that people know, okay, if I want to be a landlord and rent it to different people, then there are possibilities where I can save tax, but it's very complicated and you need a tax advisor for that.
Okay. Right. So and how are they structured? Like you were mentioning something about 10 years earlier for that. Like, are there different ways that they structure these loan contracts?
So when you talk to the bank person, the person should be able to get in a conversation with you. So mostly it happens that people get into an appointment, and I don't want to say that the papers are ready before they had the conversation,
Mm,
but it is a one head fits all, and it isn't like this. So you need someone who is getting in a conversation with you, and that means that you need to have a plan before you go to the bank.
mm,
Because in the other way, you need to trust the person that it's okay what they are figuring out for you. And what you need to know is how longer the runtime is, or the duration is, the more interest you have to pay. So the
yeah.
interest gets higher when you say, I want to have this duration for 30 years. Then the interest is higher than with 15 years. And most people do think that they can't get out of the contract anymore when you sign a contract for 30 years. But this is something we can talk later on, that the client do have possibilities. So this is one thing, the duration of the contract. Then what is really important is the person of the bank needs to know what you can pay monthly for
Mm,
the loan. So if you say, I want to have, we had the example with the 500,000 euros. And if you say, I just want to pay 800 euros a month, then you can't have this 500,000 euros.
yeah.
And if you want to pay money back in a shorter time, it's also possible. If you ask for unshuttled repayment, then you have the possibility to pay 5 or 10% of the whole amount every year extra in the contract. That
Yes.
means you finish earlier. And something that I would highly recommend for people who are nearby 50. So I don't want to say that these are old people, but you need to keep in mind that you have less time for retirement.
Mm,
So the example is always when people say, with 50, I want to purchase a property and I want to have a loan concept for 20 years. Then you get 3 years into the retirement period. And then you need to show the bank that you are able to pay the loan monthly in your retirement time as well.
yeah.
So they will check this. So if you say, I don't want to have that, then you need to have a loan for 17 years, and the money needs to be paid back in this time.
Yeah.
And that means that you need to pay more money monthly than normal. Because if you go to the bank and say, okay, we stay in the example with the 500,000 euros with this 2,500 euros a year. So maybe the runtime is 29 years. And if you have just 17 years for the payments,
Mm.
then you lose 12 years, and that will be calculated into the time you have to pay the money back.
Yep, it's there's a lot to think about, and like you said, it's very important to have that aspect of what works for you and what you can afford, uh, and yes, being able to have a dialogue with the bank. That it's not. I like what you said about it's not a one hat fits all. It's actually it needs to be tailored to what you're wanting to do, what you're capable of. There's a lot of other factors come in, like maybe you've just started a job, but in 5 years you expect to have gotten several salary increases, and you think I would be able to afford more then than I can now. It's all these things that you can try and factor in to a loan agreement. But you need someone who's going to talk to you. It might be a good example to have someone with you who understands German, who can help you out with the language and that kind of thing. But I think what's important to know, and the good point that Kerstin made, is that get into a dialogue with the people that are offering
Yeah,
the
and
loan.
of course someone who is familiar with all the rules and the insights, the knowledge, because it's not that easy to understand the loan things also for German people.
Yeah,
And this
yeah,
is something I do have a license for that, so I can give the people support here.
yeah.
And what I recommend is So when you talk to a bank, so Sparkasse or Volksbank, then you only get an offer from that bank. And there are possibilities in the market where you can talk to someone who works with a platform where 400 banks are on, and you will find a partner there with a tailor-made plan that works for you.
Yeah. And what we actually did is we went to two different banks, and we showed the second bank the offer that we got from the first bank, and we said, well, we really want to be with you, but this other bank has given us a good deal here. But this is difficult to do without a good understanding of what's being offered in the loans, because you need to really be sure that the one deal is better than the other, for example, and that because the way that they're structured, sometimes you get some benefits that you may not be aware of, or that's not clear. But again, someone like Kerstin or someone who knows, understands these things can help you with that.
Right.
Yes. We also have this option to pay a bit of extra on our yearly loan we have. It's called a Sondertilgung, I think they call it, or something like that, where you can put extra money in. I can tell you, never put extra money in because there's never extra money to put in.
This is something that happens very often, and this is an extra tip. So if you take this, you will pay for this option in the interest rate as well. It's not very high, but to keep this window open, you need to pay for it. And 90% of my clients don't use it.
I mean, it sounds like a good idea at the time if any extra money that's left over at the end of the year, we'll just put into the house. But there's always something where that extra money needs to go. Something needs to be repaired, or something needs to be fixed. So I think my advice would be, and I don't know, it's different for everyone. It's something we need to keep saying in this whole thing. But my advice is maybe skip the Sondertilgung, and just, if you do have extra money every year, then save it for repairs or maintenance on the property or something like that, because I think it's much better used that way than having this window open and you don't use it for extra money. Because I mean, who has extra money, Gus? Okay, so that's very cool. So unfortunately, we're getting to the end of our time, Kerstin. We've been speaking for almost an hour now, and I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of all the things that we want to discuss. So maybe if you would agree to come back, it would be cool if we could do maybe a follow-up episode about something. And I'd be interested to hear from the listeners what questions you have about what you've heard here. What's not clear, or what do you think we need to do an episode or kind of a deep dive into a certain aspect of it? I'm very keen to hear your questions and thoughts. So please send them to me at info@thegermanyexperience.de, and maybe I'll be lucky enough to get Kerstin to agree to come back on.
Yeah, sure. Would be great, Sean. Well, it's okay. Yeah, it's just an hour, and it doesn't feel like an hour.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to cover in a topic like this. What kind of help do you offer foreigners wanting to buy properties?
So I can guide through the whole process. So that means, so what are my topics? So I am a translator, so I know the knowledge. I can translate between English and German, and also this bank language, I would say. And I'm an expert, so I'm fully licensed in all these topics. And I'm a guide. So because when you think about the whole process, you need a lot of time to figure things out by your own. And if you have someone like me, I can shorten time in different ways. So because I know what to do and what kind of documents you need. So, and I can guide the people through the whole process. I painted a picture first of all, with this conversation, how about the finances and the possibilities. I can support the people with looking for a property. I can help with conversation with the different people, with the landlord, the bank person, the real estate agent, or the notary. And of course, I can help the people to fill in all the information in the paperwork, or to get to understand the papers that come up with a property purchase. So, for example, when you will go to the bank, you need a self-declaration where you fill in all the information about you and the property. And this mostly is in German. Yeah. And I can do, or I can accompany the clients, for example, to the notary. So that means I am in the in the north of Baden-Württemberg, near Heidelberg. So if you want to purchase in Hamburg, maybe it's too far, but this is something we need to talk about. Yeah, and I can also help the people to figure out a loan concept that suits to the situation, to get to understand, for example, also the loan offer from the bank, if they had one. And to find out, is it really that what I want and what I need and and something that makes me happy in future.
Okay. So Kerstin can help you with all of that. Get in touch with her. I'm going to put all the details in the show notes. So go and have a look at those. You'll find links to everywhere where you can find Kerstin. Kerstin, thank you very much for coming on the podcast and taking your time.
Thank you, Sean.